We have been studying theology proper. As we know, theology proper means study of God, in which already we have studied the definition of God and the arguments for the existence of God and the personality of God, in which we have studied God's characteristics as well as names and titles also. Today we are going to study about the essence of God. Let me read it from your note, page number 26. The essence of God refers to the basic aspect of the nature of God. Essence means every living being has a very basic nature, which can be said as essence. So, for example, man is combination of body, soul and spirit. Then how can we understand God? Because God has no body. So, when we see or when we study about God, the essence refers to his basic nature, structure and the constitution or the characteristics, which all are included in the essence of God. So basically the essence of God is said, God is spirit. Sometime in some theologians refer this as spirituality of God, because God in his very nature is spirit. We all know that John chapter 4:24 says about this. John chapter 4:24. Let me read it for you. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So God is spirit. Of course, in the translation, they have mentioned God is a spirit, but some Greek scholars say in original it should not be said as a spirit. It should be mentioned God is spirit. Since this statement really means God is spirit, it tells that God as to his nature is spirit. To his very nature is spirit. That means when we say man, immediately we imagine the body. Whether we imagine the spirit or soul, as soon as someone say man, we imagine a body like this, having a head with two eyes, nose, mouth, 2 ears, and hands and legs. So, whenever a person say a man, in our mind we picture a man like this. In the same way, when we say God is spirit, it tells that he has no body, that's all. He has no body, at the same he is a person. So we refer or we mean, or the Bible tells, God is spirit, which has no body. So in theology we say God is incorporeal and immaterial. That means incorporeal means he has no body, and immaterial means also he has no physical or chemical components. Our body is a constitution of physical as well as chemical components, whereas God spirit doesn't have these qualities, neither physical or nor chemical qualities applicable to his person. That is the reason it says incorporeal means without material or body. Since God has no body but spirit, we are prohibited to make image to God. Since God is spirit, who has no body, we cannot attribute a visible body to him. Since we cannot attribute a visible body to him, the Bible prohibits us to make any image, whether human image or adulterated human image or animal's image or bird's image or whatever may be the image that we could see. Bible prohibits us to make image for God because God has no body. He is spirit only. Then when we see God is spirit, or when we study God is spirit, first quality of the spirit is it is incorporeal and immaterial. Then second is God is invisible, because spirit cannot be seen. God is spirit. Only material can be seen, whereas spirit cannot be seen. So we say the spirit of God is invisible, or God is invisible. Since God is spirit, no human eye can see him. That is the reason in John 1:18, Gospel of John 1:18, it says, no man has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him. So, God is invisible. No one can see God, it tells us. But when we see, or when we say that God is invisible, immediately people used to ask, people in the sense, Christians or unbeliever, whoever it may be, if you study about the Bible or if he knows about theology, Christian theology, he may ask a question, if God is spirit, or since God is spirit, how can one understand or explain the text which depicts people of Old Testament as seeing God? For example, Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1 to 5. Let us turn our Bible to Old Testament, Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 to 5, in which, let me read that portion for you. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. See, here is a saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne. So, there are many passages in the Old Testament as if people have seen God. So, how can we answer to this question? So, this form of God, or can be seen as theophany. It is known as theophany. Let me read it from your book, page number 26. Although God cannot be seen, he sometimes appeared to men in the Old Testament in a visible form. This visible form of God is known as theophanies. Theo means God, okay. So, it's a temporary appearance of God to human being to convey a message. That's the reason, if we further read in the note, this theophanical appearance of God were voluntary and temporary. See, it is an appearance of God, not the very nature of God. God is spirit, but he wants to communicate a message to a man or group of men. In such situations, God appears in a visible form. God appears in a visible form so that he could communicate a message to men. Otherwise, he doesn't have any body because his very nature is spirit. being a God, He is capable of appearing to men. That's all. He is capable of appearing to man. That's all. Otherwise, he doesn't have any body. So we read further in the notes, these theophanical manifestations or appearances would immediately disappear. At once, the purpose of his manifestation was over. So, in the very nature of God, God is incorporeal, and then God is invisible, and third one is God is alive, which means God is a living being. The Spirit has life. God's Spirit has life in itself, under which we can study some other qualities of the Spirit also. The first one is the living God, which means the Spirit of God is living. He is called the living God. Life includes feeling, activity, power, etc. God has all these basic activity of life. He is the source of all life. He is the source of all life. The Spirit has life, and as well as the Spirit gives life to all that has life in the creature or created world. Any living being that we could see in this earth or we could not see by our naked eye has received the life from the living God who is existing in the Spirit. Okay. Then the self-existence of God, which means God is Spirit, but the Spirit of God is not created by any other outside forces. The Spirit of God exists itself. It received all the sources from God alone. It means that God is not a created being. He himself is the source and ground of his existence. Then third one under God, God is alive. Infinity of God. Infinity means without limit of time or space or without termination. The divine nature has no limits or bounds. God cannot be limited by the universe or confined to the universe or limited by the time. And all his characters are infinite. All his characters are infinite. See, that is the reason nowadays some modern philosophers used to say infinite is God. See, that is a wrong definition of God. Infinite is not God, because infinite is something which cannot be measured. In mathematics also we used to say infinite. Such an idea is again foreign to the Bible. Bible tells God is Spirit, that Spirit is infinite. God in his very nature is infinite. Infinite is not God. When if someone says or if someone claims infinite is God, he doesn't believe in personal God. But Bible says God is a person, that person is Spirit. In that Spirit, he is infinite. Okay. Then the immensity of God. The Spirit of God includes the characteristics of immensity of God. Immensity means God's infinity in relation to space. God cannot be limited by space. He is present everywhere at the same time. That means we used to say God is in heaven. That's true. God is in heaven. But at the same time, the heaven cannot limit him. Because God is everywhere. His presence is everywhere. His spirit is everywhere. So, as the time cannot limit him, the space also cannot limit him. So, God is infinite in time and God is immensity in the space. And the eternity of God. Eternity is related to time, hence eternity of God means that God is not limited by time. He is without beginning or end. See, every created being or created thing has a time. For example, earth is created some thousands of years ago. But can we say God began on this day? No, we cannot say, because God has no beginning. And the say also, He has no end also. He is, that is the reason we used to say, God was, God is, God will be. It is for understanding. But we used to say God is, because God is always there. So that is the reason many would not say God was, God is, God will be. But God is always there. So God is. There is no there was no time in which He was not. And there will not be any time in which He will not be. He is always there and He is always as God alone. So the Spirit of God includes all these basic characteristics in His nature. For example, once again let me summarize it. God is incorporeal, God is invisible, God is life, self-existence, God is self-existent, and God has infinity and the immensity of God and eternity of God. All these qualities reveal or included in the spirituality of God, or the Spirit of God has all these characteristics. Nothing or none of these could be eliminated from the Spirit of God, which means He will be always as a Spirit. He is invisible, He is incorporeal, He is life, He existed through His self-existence, and He is infinite, and His Spirit is immensity and eternity. So nothing can be, or none of these characters can be eliminated or deleted from the Spirit of God. So this spiritual nature is theologically known as essence of God. Therefore, the essence of God refers to spirit nature of God or spirituality. God's self-existence is implied in the phrase, I am that I am. See, that's what we said already. Many theologians will never say God was, because God Himself says, I am that I am. So we can say He is that He is. So God cannot be, because for God there is no past, there was no future. For Him always everything is in present form only. After studying the very Spirit of God, or the very nature of God, as God is Spirit, now let us turn to the attributes of God. The attributes of God as classified into two kinds of attributes. One is non-moral attributes, page number 28 in your notes. Non-moral attributes or it can be said as incommunicable attributes. The second kind of attributes are known as moral attributes. It is also known as communicable attributes. So let me repeat it again. There are two kinds of attributes given to God. One is non-moral attributes or incommunicable attributes. The second one is moral attributes or communicable attributes. Now, let us study each of these with their subtitles or subclassifications. Which means, let us study first the non-moral attributes. Why do we say non-moral attributes or incommunicable attributes? See the word incommunicable, that means the attributes which God has under this title. Incommunicable attributes means these attributes are only to Him alone, which cannot be communicated to any created being. See, that is the reason it is known as incommunicable, because communicable means communicating one another. Whereas incommunicable attributes belong to God alone. What are those incommunicable attributes? These incommunicable attributes are, first one is omnipotence of God. Omnipotence means almightiness or almighty or all powerful. Omnipotent means all powerful. Omnipotence belongs to God alone. This omnipotence is not given to any created being, including human being, which is considered as the highest creature of God's work. So, incommunicable attributes cannot be communicated to any created being, including man. It belongs to God and God alone. So, the first incommunicable attributes is omnipotence of God. Under omnipotence, we say with God all things are possible. For example, in Matthew chapter 19, verse 26, let me read it. But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. See, with God all things are possible. So, omnipotence of God means God is able to do all things which is not contrary to His very nature. Why do we say this? See, God is so powerful, but there are something we have to keep it in our mind when we say God is powerful. God is powerful to do all except what are contrary to His very nature. For example, God is faithful. That is very essence of his nature, or the very basic character. One of the basic characteristics of God is faithful. Although God is faithful and he is powerful and omnipotent, he cannot lie, because telling lie or communicating lie is contrary to his very nature of God. So, when we say God is omnipotent, we have to understand God does everything without contradicting his very nature. Okay. Then God cannot sin, because God is holy. God is holy, that is very nature of God. Being he is holy, he cannot do sin, because doing sin is against his nature. So we have to say God is able to do all things except sin, which is very much against his nature, or sin is contrary to his nature. God will not do sin. Without having sin, he can do all other things which are not against his nature. Okay. Then third one is also, these are the exceptions of God's omnipotence. We have to keep it in mind, because sometimes people may ask a question: if God can do all things, could he deny himself? Or could he do sin? Or could he lie? We have to say no. God cannot lie. God cannot sin. God cannot deny himself, because these are against his nature. So when we say God is omnipotent, God is able to do all things which are permissible to his holy nature. He will not do anything that is contrary to his holy nature. So otherwise, God is able to do all things. So in the incommunicable attributes, the first one is God is omnipotent. Then second incommunicable attribute is the omniscience of God. Omniscience of God is, or omniscience of God means all knowing. All knowing. God knows past, God knows present, God knows future of every event. See, God knows the past, God knows the present, and God knows the future of every person as well as every event. We as human being may not know what would happen to the very next second, or the very next hour, or very next day. But God knows each and every person, or all created beings, and their present and their future. And we may know the past, that also very limited only. But God knows the past perfectly, God knows the present perfectly, God knows the future perfectly, without having any lack in his knowledge. So this absolute perfect knowledge is known as omniscience of God. For example, 1 John 3:20, shall we turn our Bible? 1 John 3:20. For if our heart condemns us, God is greater than our hearts and knoweth all things. God knoweth all things. God knows all things. So God knows everything. So omniscience of God is the second incommunicable attributes of God. The third incommunicable attributes of God is the omnipresence of God. Omnipresence of God means everywhere God is present at same time. That means God is now where I am. At the same time, God is there where you are. And God is present everywhere. There is no place in which God is not present. So, God is present at the same time everywhere. That is the reason in Psalms 139 verses 7 to 12. Whither shall I go from thy spirit? Or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand leadeth me, and thy right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even the night shall be light about me. Yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to thee. See, since God is omnipresent, whether day or night, God is everywhere, all over the space which He has created. He is in earth, He is in all other planets, He is all over the universe. Nowadays, scientists say it is not universe only, it is multiverse. Whatever may be, scientifically, if there are multiverse, no need to be afraid. God is in multiverse too. At the same time, He is present in heaven also. So, in His incommunicable attributes, we have seen three basic attributes. God is omnipotent, God is omniscient, God is omnipresent, and the fourth one is the immutability of God. Immutability means unchangeableness. Therefore, God is not changeable in His being, His attributes. He never changes. When He created the universe, His power did not diminish or change. See, we know God created such a wonderful multiverse or the universe or all the things that we see are not. They are very beautiful. But before creating, He was powerful. And after creating, He did not lose any of His power. See, let us imagine we work hard from day, early morning to the evening. What would be after working for at least 8 hours? We may feel tired, or we may be tired, or we will be tired. Because so much of calories are consumed from our body while we work. Because we are created being. But God is Spirit, He is all powerful, after creating all these things, he does not or he did not lose any of his power or any of his strength. If at all we refer it as strength or his mightiness, he did not lose his mightiness. He did not lack anything to create also. So that is the reason God is immutable, or the immutability of God. The immutability of God is there are many verses in your note. If you when you have time, please read. Anyhow, let me read one verse for you. Malachi chapter 3 in the Old Testament. Malachi chapter 3 verse 6. It says, "For I am the Lord, I change not." See? For I am the Lord, I change not. It is an attribute of God. He cannot change any of his power. So this is the fourth incommunicable attribute. Then the fifth one is sovereignty of God. The word sovereign means the highest or supreme. Therefore, sovereignty of God means that God is supreme ruler in the universe or multiverse. He has absolute authority over his creation. No other being could challenge his sovereignty. Sometimes people used to think Satan could claim or Satan oppose God's sovereignty. No, Satan cannot, or no other being can claim or receive the sovereignty of God. So, sovereignty of God is also one of the incommunicable attribute which God alone has. So, in the non-moral attributes or incommunicable attributes, we have seen 5 important incommunicable attributes which cannot be communicated to any created being, which God alone has. Again, let me summarize it for you. The 5 non-moral attributes: omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, immutability of God, and the sovereignty of God. Now, let us turn to the moral attributes of God. Why do we say it is a moral attribute, or it is also known as communicable attributes? See, as we have discussed already, communicable means it can be communicated from one to another. So, communicable means these attributes are communicated to his creature, particularly to human being and to the angels too. Or these communicable attributes are communicated to human being. So, man or human being or any created being which has possessed these communicable attributes are responsible to God, who is the source of all those communicable attributes. So, moral attributes or communicable attributes belong to God. However, God has communicated, or God is expecting from his creature these communicable attributes. For example, let me read some important moral attributes: holiness, grace, mercy, loving kindness, goodness, the righteousness, truth, veracity, and faithfulness of God. See, all these characteristics or moral characters has its root in God, because God is holy, God is grace, God is mercy, and God is love. God is love. God is good. God is righteous, and God is truth, and God is faithful. See, all these qualities belong to God. But what happens when God created human being? He gave some likeness of these moral characteristics belong to God, but He has communicated these moral qualities to human being also. God is holy. He expects holiness from us. God is gracious, and He expects grace from us toward fellow being. God is merciful, and He expects us to show mercy who are in need. God is love, and He asks us to love others. God is good. God expects us to do good to others. God is righteous, and He expects us to be righteous. God is truth. He wants us to be truth in our life. God is faithful. He wants us to be faithful in our all doings. So, these attributes are known as communicable attributes, because God has these attributes, and God has communicated these attributes as when He created us in His image. So when He created us in His image, or when He created man in His image, He has put all these holiness, faithfulness, truthfulness, love, grace, mercy in Adam through His likeness. So He expects us to be holy, to be faithful, to love others, to have mercy, to be gracious to others. So these moral attributes are given to us, and God expects us to exercise these attributes in our life. So these are communicable attributes. So in the attributes of God, there are two kinds, as we have studied. One is incommunicable attributes, under which there are 5 qualities or 5 attributes are known as incommunicable: omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, immutability, and sovereignty of God. And in moral attributes or communicable attributes: holiness, grace, mercy, love, goodness, righteousness, truthfulness, veracity, and faithfulness of God. Let us stop today. In our next class, we may go into unity and Trinity of God.